Well, welcome back, everyone. Episode number 101. We're on to a new chapter.
Yeah,
Mastering
There's
modern
life
selling.
after
whole new,
100.
That's
a
right.
new century.
That's right. So, Brandon, Carson, welcome back, and
Thanks,
Rob.
Frank.
Rob, am I going to say your name right? Is it Fegan or Fagan?
Yeah, you got it.
Either one. Okay.
Either one will work, but
Either
Fegan's
one will work.
He's been called
So,
worse.
He's
Yeah.
been called work.
much worse.
Right. Well, welcome, Rob, to our first episode in our new century here of Mastering Modern Selling. And as always, we're sponsored, thankfully, by Fist Bump and Brandon's team that does a great job of just making all this come together. We now have, two producers, Brandon, working on this. So we really appreciate, and if you are in the business of looking for some CEO executive assistants on LinkedIn, Fist Bump is the place to go. So thank you, and thank Fist Bump, Brandon.
That's that level of sophistication you gain after 100 episodes.
I know.
Right.
I know. We had
Well,
our whole production team on here a minute ago trying to figure all this out.
That's right. Well,
So-
and we have some ads going out for the show now too. We're actually getting it paid campaigns, putting money in LinkedIn's pocket, and getting more people, and hopefully the next 100 episodes will grow even faster.
Love it.
I went back and
Everybody on the
no, go ahead. I went back and
Oh, is
watched episode 1. You were sitting on a balcony out in Florida trying to avoid a hurricane. That's how we.
was that episode 1?
That was
I knew it
episode
was
1,
early.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
So-
Well, and when we have people on from the podcast before we jump in, we really appreciate you as well. We know we're kind of the live show centric with the comments, like Bob Britton jumping on with Aloha, but you're on the podcast. We really appreciate you. If you like what you're hearing, please give us a review, screenshot it, send it to people that could find value in it. We'd really appreciate you doing that as well for us.
All right. Enough of the commercials. We're going to move on with things here. Rob, welcome. Great to have you. And tell us a little bit of, we're going to talk today about a subject that I don't know that we've talked about in 100 episodes prior, which is how do you use partnerships as a strategy for mastering modern selling? And in particular, Rob, I know you're going to talk a little bit about your journey working with Microsoft partners and how you do that, but kind of let's tell us everybody, what you do and who you are and how you got into the partnership business.
Yeah, sure. So for me, I started off as an individual contributor many moons ago. So I was working in the value-added reseller or VAR community. And when I first started, I was in this company that I could literally sell anything. It was Cisco, Dell, Microsoft. It just had this plethora of products in there. And so for me, that was the very, going back 15 years, that was the very first introduction I had to Microsoft. And I quickly realized that is where I want to pivot to. I really found like, even in the early days of Microsoft, and, Carson will appreciate some of the references to BPAWS or Skype and all of those different things that were in the early days. And for me, though, it really resonated, and it was what I brought to the customers was I saw so much value in that platform and in the way Microsoft was approaching the market that I really just pivoted my entire career. And so I continued in that sort of sales role for quite a few years. And then back in 2015, I pivoted and started my own company with a co-founder. We grew that all on the back of Microsoft. So it was completely a Microsoft-centric company, and sold that in 2020, March of 2020 to be exact, which was hindsight being what it is, amazing opportunity. And since then, I really wanted to continue that sort of passion for sharing Microsoft. And now I coach partners on how to work with Microsoft, because when you get it, it is absolutely amazing what you can do and the impact you can have. So for me, that is what I do now. Is I work with other founders, leaders, and owners, and help them really understand the ecosystem, how to leverage the ecosystem, and then to use the phrase "the master in modern selling" is how to do that with a partner like Microsoft.
You got a big fan base too, it looks like, and from the chat here.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Welcome to Roger and Mohammed from Bahrain.
All right. Yeah.
Um,
All right.
so thank you. We
I
appreciate the
like
kind words.
Rob. I like that. The Microsoft whisperer. Man, you gotta trademark that or something.
Right. Well, for me, it really is a passion now. I mean, I had the good fortune to sell my last company, and now it's really just pouring back into the community, sharing as much as I can, and helping people be as successful with this motion of working with Microsoft. So for me, I just love it, and I'm glad to support folks.
So Rob, just so I'm hearing what you're saying. You were a Microsoft partner, or your company was a Microsoft partner for many years, and that was the company you sold. And
Yeah.
now you've switched over to really taking what you learned with all the years working with Microsoft and helping other Microsoft partners be more successful in the ecosystem. Is that kind of the transition?
You nailed it. Yeah, that is exactly what I do now.
So I know we're going to get into talking about strategies and selling and things like that, but and obviously Microsoft has expanded, I guess, its breadth of what it does and how it does it over the last few years. What is the advice that you give? What's the biggest advice that you give to a Microsoft partner, and especially if somebody was really trying to start out in the Microsoft ecosystem? Call Carson. Is that the first thing advice you give?
Wouldn't
That's the
hurt.
second, right? It wouldn't hurt. It's the second or third thing I tell them to do. But for me, really, I tell partners, it is a complex ecosystem. But at the end of the day, what they're looking for is partners that will pour into helping them achieve the mission, right? And they've got a very clear mission. They've got a clear set of products and services they offer to achieve that mission. And so, one, understanding that and finding out where you as a business align with that. And then guys like Carson are like the perfect person to reach out to and touch if you can help impact the world and sort of the Microsoft ecosystem from where Carson sits. And there are plenty of different organizations inside of Microsoft that do different or work with different people, different clients. And so it's understanding that. But really, if you can find your niche, your superpower, I'll call it, and then apply that to the people that it makes most sense to in Microsoft. That's really the first step that I talk about. And I think we'll break it down much more in depth here in a few minutes, but really knowing where you fit in their world, in the world of Microsoft, knowing what impact you can bring, and then share that with as many people inside of Microsoft while at the same time working with your client base.
Yeah, I think my challenge would be, if you're listening, thinking about not only, I know we have some people that listen that are in tech, that are part of partners. You may be a partner with the competition. There's enough room in the sandbox for us all, and this can certainly be applied. But also, if you're not thinking today about where you could go out and form mutually beneficial partnerships, I think that's a really key element. I was at a consultant firm years ago, and one of the things that we would proactively go out and look to do is, hey, you have this offering or this value add. We don't have that, but we do get opportunities for what you do that we don't do. Where can we start investing over here? And I've always found that model of like seeking to serve first, making that investment. There's never any guarantee that if I give company XYZ a lead that they will benefit from that I can't sell to. There's no guarantee that they're going to reciprocate. But I have found over time that if you continue to invest in those models and in those relationships and go out and proactively seek partnership, it pays dividends.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Carson. I think, I'm a big believer in reciprocity, and don't do it for the thought of getting something back. Just pour into it. And at some point, reciprocity it'll kick in and it will pay dividends in ways you may have never even imagined.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly, it makes you a trusted advisor. If I can tell my client or my potential client, hey, no, I don't do that, but I have this organization that I trust, this person at that organization that I trust. You're in good hands there. Let me make the introduction. Guess what? People can come back and will come back to you because they know that you're going to shoot straight with them. You're not going to just try to cram a solution or a product down their throat to get the deal. You're going to take good care of them. And that's the kind of thing that earns that credibility and trust, especially right now when we're in a very buyer-centric market.
Right. Absolutely.
And it reminds me, Rob, you and I did a webinar together, and I want to say a couple months ago. It could have been 6 or 8 or 9 months ago. I can't keep track anymore. But I remember one of the things that you said in there that a lot of Microsoft partners do. That's one of their biggest mistakes is they go to Microsoft sellers like Carson and others, and they say, "Do you have leads for me?"
Yeah.
Right. I'll piggy that on, Carson. One of the things that you said in one of our episodes is if you want to get a Microsoft seller's attention, go to them and say, how can I help you get to President's Club? Like,
Boom.
I think when I was thinking of this show, I'm like, okay, Rob and Carson, like everybody, if you're a Microsoft partner, if you just break it down to those two things, don't go to them and say, where's my leads? Go to them and say, how can I help you get to President's Club? And I think the rest of it could just probably take care of itself from there, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have a nasty habit of, and Rob, I want to get your thoughts on this. We have a nasty habit of going to customers or other people and talking all about ourselves and all the great things about ourselves and our product and service. That's the last thing you want to do. What looks like a win to you? How do I deliver that win?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's probably the most common thing I hear is, how do I get leads from Microsoft? I'm like, oh my goodness, they're not just raining from the trees. Let's step back and look at what can you do to add value to the seller's life. So in your case, Carson, how can I help Carson to hit President's Club, to achieve the goals that he's got, to sell in the product sets that he's focused on. And so I tell partners there's three things that you can bring to the table that will almost universally work to help that Microsoft seller. First, and probably the most obvious, is revenue. If you've got a deal, let's bring it to Microsoft because that's a benefit for you, it's a benefit for them, and obviously a benefit for the customer. But that's not the only thing that you can bring to the Microsoft seller that can change the game for them. The next one is relationships. So if you've got relationships that Microsoft doesn't have, there's tremendous value in that. And Carson, I'll throw Microsoft under the bus a little bit here and say that my experience is Microsoft is great at getting to IT. Procurement, IT, like masters second to none. But as soon as you pivot and say want to get into the lines of business, that's not the comfort zone for Microsoft. That not many Microsoft sellers that I work with are really entrenched in the business. And if I'm entrenched in the business as a partner, and I know, say, the CRO or the human resources VP, and I can bring that person to the table, to the discussion, and say, look, one of the things we want to do is X or Y. And to do that, we need the buy-in from these people. So bringing those relationships to the table is critical, in my opinion. And then the third R that I tell partners they need to focus on is relevance. And this can mean different things to different people. So in the systems integrator community, if we have joint customers, let's plan and strategize on those. Or if I'm in the ISV or independent software vendor community, if I solve a unique problem that your customer may have, it's not something Microsoft solves out of the box, that's a very relevant discussion. So for me, and Carson, feel free to chime in here, but I tell partners, revenue, relationships, and relevance. Those are three things you can universally bring to the table and have the attention of.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to stay at the pulse of who you want to matter to. You got to be attuned to their needs. I mean, I want to matter to my wife. I need to care what she's reading, what she's watching. I want a company to care about me. I need to stay attuned to what are their priorities, what are their sales plays, what's going to get their team paid. I want to give a shout out to a friend and mentor, Richard Vickers. Perfect comment there. It's the gimme, gimme, gimme instead of how can I help? Rob, you described something that's kind of been the very antithesis of how I've always gone to market because nobody could effectively, consistently get outside of IT. And so I made that my mission and it defined me as a seller here. And the other thing I would say is that we've got to get our sellers out of the mindset of being territorial. It's not just your account list, your customer. What I love finding is when a partner, and I think sometimes we have sellers that get so put off by the I want a handout approach that they'll shun all partners as a result. And look, if a partner has a better relationship at an organization than I have, then I'm an idiot if I don't go out and find every way I can to help that partner win. Get me out of the way. If I can create this partner as an extension of my sales army that's going out there selling for me, saves me a lot of work and headache. Let me go get some funding dollars or some investment, or let me meet with that partner and say, look, what's going to move the needle? What can I do to help you win? Like, take your ego out of the equation and make the partner the hero. Those are the types of things that we've got to be thinking about. So I agree. Like, we are necessarily and definitely deservedly thrown under the bus there. There's things that we can do on both sides to make the relationship gel better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, on the point of relationships, partners come to me and say, well, I don't really know anybody at the companies they're working on. This is where I take a page right out of your playbook, Carson. It's like, well, as a partner, we can go and we can leverage LinkedIn, find the right people, start to build a relationship with those people. And when we do that over time, we can start to build those relationships and bring those to the table. This isn't a silver bullet. This is a strategy over time. This is a strategy for success over years. And this is how I built my last company, was over time. I went into it knowing, hey, I might not win on month 1 or month 2 or even month 12, but by month 24, nobody's going to beat me. Nobody. And so if you go into it with that mindset, and I appreciate we still all have quotas and we still all have to do the things we have to do, but at the end of the day, if you leverage social and build these relationships on that second pillar, that again to me is such a strong value add to bring to the table and to build the partner relationship with Microsoft.
Yeah, and Rob, I was going to ask about that, and maybe it's a good time to transition in, because I know you have your show that you do, and I believe, if I remember correctly, one of your motions with that is you invite Microsoft team members to come on and be guests on your show as a way to build relationships with them and give back and create a personal brand around you of being the Microsoft whisperer, as somebody called you earlier, that the lens of which people look at you is that you're so connected with Microsoft because of these modern selling motions. What we call modern selling is your show, your LinkedIn activity, your personal brand, your reputation. Talk about how you do that and how you coach some of these partners to do that as well.
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's so many facets to it. But for me, really, I want people to know what my superpower is, what the thing is I can bring to impact the world. And that for me is helping partners navigate the Microsoft ecosystem. And to do that, I've been very intentional about building my brand around that, about learning everything and anything I can around that topic, continue to educate myself and share all of the things I learn. I have no secrets. There's nothing that you couldn't get that I teach online somewhere. You might have to piece it together over like 30 shows or 50 posts, but for me, it's all about sharing and just pouring all of that back into the community. And I'm of the opinion that you're not paying me for information, you're paying for implementation. I can help you to bring this goal that you have to fruition much faster. You can go get the information anyway. With Microsoft publishes everything I teach. There's no, like, I'm not teaching something that isn't taught by either Microsoft or, folks like Carson are out there sharing every day what they're doing. So, that for me is very important, and leveraging the social tools like LinkedIn. Me personally, that's my only platform, a little bit on YouTube, but LinkedIn is my go-to platform for that.
Hey, Rob, a couple questions kind of related to that. Do you find as you start to work with new partners or Microsoft partners that you have to kind of establish a mindset of how to best work and a philosophy of how to best work in the Microsoft ecosystem, that sometimes they may, other than just, hey, give me a lead, which I know we talked about, but even when we were just sitting on here with personal brand, and to me, that ties into relevance, like you were talking about earlier, or relationships. Do you feel like a lot of the initial coaching that you have to do is that mindset aspect of things. And then I guess part two of that is, do you recommend to them that they invest in building that personal brand as a tool to get in that door with the right players in the Microsoft ecosystem?
So, to your first question, I absolutely spend sometimes an inordinate amount of time on mindset
Okay.
because you really have to commit to this. And I'm not saying that Microsoft has to be your only partner and that you can't be successful having multiple partners, but if you're going to commit to growing your Microsoft business, it truly is a mindset. It's you have to think, how can I help them? How can I pour into them? So for me, yes, the mindset is critical. And then on the second point around, again, getting back to personal branding, is that I absolutely believe that you make it much easier on yourself if you pour into your personal profile, to what you contribute to the community, what you're putting out there in the world. I believe that if you commit to that and you have the mindset of, I'm here to help, I'm here to serve, I'm going to pour in. And again, the conversation we had earlier with Carson about reciprocity, it's going to come back to me. Whether it's a seller sees something I posted and says, "Oh, I've got a customer with that exact problem," or it's a customer that sees what you did and say, "Oh, I need to touch base with Paul because he's talking about that very same thing I'm dealing with." So
That's where I want to springboard, Rob. So on the
sure.
last few shows, we've kind of had this consistent theme around, the C-suite or the CEOs not being sales prevention and not standing in their own way. It kind of sprang out of a conversation. I think it was episode 99 with Alice Hyman, and we talked about it on episode 100. But what have you learned most? Because I know you're a prolific poster. You're out there. I see you every day. What have you learned most from your strategy? But also, how does that play into your work with partners? Because I think one thing that frustrates me when I look at partners is, there's a prime opportunity for them to all be prolific posters, sharing stories about what they've done to empower transformation of the organizations that they work with. Like, why in the world aren't more of their principals or their CEOs or their senior partners sharing stories about what they're doing? It blows my mind. I'd love to hear what you've learned, but then also how this plays out, because surely you coach these folks on how they could do better from a social perspective as well.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, Rob, before you answer, Carson, I have a question for you, and maybe this, and Rob, this will tie into it. Are you attracted, Carson, to a partner that is doing that prolific sort of outreach in person? Is that way more
Yeah,
attractive and way more? And I guess, Rob, going into
I
your answer.
just, well, and
we
honestly,
love
just getting on your
storytelling.
radar.
We
Right.
love stories. Yeah. It's on your, what better way to get on your radar than I'm seeing somebody show up every day who works for a partner who's sharing amazing stories that I can comment on. And, but you know what? The biggest thing I look for in a partner is, how do I go out and I figure out what are they doing to be successful and how can I replicate this at scale? That's what I think about all day, every day.
Yeah.
What,
There's so
and
many
it's
answers
also,
I'm bouncing around now. I'm like, oh my goodness, here.
I know we're like a pinball machine today.
Yeah,
yeah, we
right.
are. Well, and Rob, I'd say that it's kind of like what you've done is that your online presence, you do webinars, you do your show, you're consistent on LinkedIn, you comment, you're seen. And so automatically they change their perception of who you are and how connected you are just from your activity. And Carson, to your point of like, you're seeing somebody doing that, or the other thing is you got a partner that's emailing you, asking you questions or for your time with the other 300 emails that you have inside your inbox, right? Just this, one of the things that frustrates me right now, by the way, is how easy it is to leverage this LinkedIn tool to build reputation and meet people. And even with AI, and I'm waiting for the quarterly data to come out, but 1% of LinkedIn users create content on a regular basis, which is like twice a month. 1%. There's so much fertile soil if you just start sharing stories, creating content for more people to see you, know you. And then the Carsons of the world start to see you talking about Microsoft and go, oh, look at that.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of things to unpack here, but for starters, let me say that it works. I tell partners, look, it works if you show up or Brandon, you mentioned consistency. That is the key right there. Consistency is the key. So I tell partners, like, even for me, for my business, I don't have any paid advertising. I'm not out there cold calling. What I'm doing is I'm leveraging social media and specifically LinkedIn to share my stories, to share the information I've got, and attract the right people to me. For me, that has been my sole strategy for this business, and it's paid dividends far beyond what I could have ever imagined. Now, I will say in year one, it didn't. It was real tough in year one. And year two, it was not even amazing. But I stuck with it. I know whether I got one like or no comments, or I got 40 likes and one comment, it didn't matter to me. I was just, look, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it consistently every day, not going to miss a day, maybe one or two here or there, but very consistent, and it paid off. Now, to pivot and talk about exposure, Carson is faced with 400,000 Microsoft partners. So that's a huge number. Like,
Did you say
and
400,000? You broke up there, Rob. You said 400,000?
400,000. Wow, it's such a big word that I didn't have enough time to get it out.
Carson, how do you deal with all those 400,000 every day? How do you handle all that?
This is where I want to go with this.
They're not all reaching out to me.
Okay.
Yeah. But to me, I tell partners that so few of you are out there actively engaging with Microsoft, with the content, with posting, with commenting, that you could separate yourself out with never even pick up another phone. You could just start doing this and be light years ahead of almost 399,000 other partners. So there is a huge opportunity for partners. And this gets back to your mindset question, Tom, earlier. People don't have they're like, oh, that's this other thing that, people do on the site. No, this is the new way to get to your clients, the new way to get to your prospects. I'm not saying that picking up the phone is dead by any stretch of the imagination, or that you shouldn't do all the prospecting activities. But this, in my opinion, is the more effective way. It gets you more exposure, and it's a bring them to you versus you trying to get to them. So I'm a huge fan of this. I think that any partner that hasn't integrated modern selling and specifically LinkedIn into their sales motion is missing an opportunity to get to customers, missing a huge opportunity to get in front of Microsoft and to establish yourself as the authority in that area.
Very powerful mic drop stuff in there. I think something that really jumped out at me, and this is something that we underscore on here too, and you said this earlier about it not being a silver bullet, but let's be real. Like, the first year that I really doubled down on social selling, it was an anomaly. My manager at the time didn't get it. In fact, they weren't a fan of me or my process. But it was year two, it blew up and it went over like gangbusters. It took understanding why the process would matter and sticking with it and continuing to invest. I mean, that's really all you're doing. That's what social selling is. That's what mastering modern selling is. You're making investments. You're figuring out where's your customers, where's your audience, and figuring out the right way to engage them everywhere that they are. You're meeting them where they are. You're passively educating. You're creating relationships where they wouldn't have existed otherwise. And that stuff doesn't immediately turn into a deal. A lot of us are selling things that have long sales cycles. These don't happen overnight. But if you go out and you fill the pipe, guess what's going to happen? That pipe's going to burst after 6 months to a year. And that's why you got to play the long game.
Why do you guys think, and this isn't Microsoft partner related, but it's just as valuable for them as everyone else. Like, if we put a cold calling strategy in place and we don't close a deal in the first week, we don't go, oh, the phone doesn't work. You don't invest and go to a trade show for the first time, go, this is our first time having a booth there, and you get done and go, well, that didn't work. You look at it and go, we got to keep coming back. Like, we're the new guy. We got to keep coming back. But there's this tendency, and Rob, I've heard you use the word consistency. Carson, you talked about the first year it didn't work, about being consistent. Why do you think it is with LinkedIn that it's so easy for people to go, well, we tried it and it didn't work?
Because people have what I like to call comfortable ways of failing or comfortable ways of mediocrity. And you're trying a new muscle. It's like if I didn't go to the gym and I went to the gym and I had a bad workout. That's no good. Or I work out for a week and I don't lose any weight and I don't look any better. And then well, that doesn't work. And then I just go back to what I was doing before. We've all been there and done it at various things in our life and in our career. But these things are challenging. It's not easy to go out and prospect every single day. Personally, I'm one of those sick people. I love to prospect. I love to send messages out to executives. I get the law of averages. I know for every 120 messages, I might get one response, but that's what I'm willing to do to get that meeting because I know what I can do with that meeting. But other people don't feel that way. They're willing to just keep humdrumming along, talking to their same old IT and procurement relationships and selling absolutely nothing and bringing home a mediocre paycheck. I'm not satisfied with that.
Right. Well, I also think, Brandon, to your question is, I think cold calling and emailing and even trade shows, people think of that as, hey, it's tangible effort, right? And I think sometimes people think the LinkedIn and the social aspect of it is more intangible and they don't feel like they've worked hard enough at it. And so then well, that didn't work, but I can go do something I can work hard at and get tangible effort. I think there's a element to that. I don't know if you agree, Robert and Carl, but I think there's an element to that.
I absolutely agree. I think that people have to recognize it's like any motion. You need to stick with it no matter what it is. And social selling and selling on LinkedIn, it is a process and you have to commit to the process. I'm a big fan of having a strategy or a framework and working that framework. And really, I have this value equation I like to talk about, which is it's value multiplied by time. How much value can you bring over how much time? And the person that can bring the most value over the most time wins every time. So to me, it really is
You know,
right.
I was talking with one of my old investors from my agency that I launched in 2002, and obviously I wasn't on LinkedIn then. And he was asking me, he's like, "So Brandon, what are you doing? What's this LinkedIn stuff?" And I hadn't thought about this before, but I said, "Hey, do you remember the go to market strategy that we used back with By Design in 2002?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, you were on a plane a lot." And I said, "Yeah, I got on a plane and I went to all these different events. I went to these different trade shows. We sponsored associations, and so that I could go in and be on stage and speak. Like we paid our way into having breakout sessions. And when I was there, and it was kind of a joke on our P&Ls because I had a really large alcohol bill because I was working the bars at these events." And I said, "You remember all these?" Like, "Oh yeah, yeah. You went and became known in the industry, and that helped everyone. Like our salespeople, when they would call, they're like, 'Oh yeah, I met Brandon last weekend,' or whatever it may be." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "That's all we're doing with LinkedIn." And he
Yeah,
goes, "Oh, that makes
I love
sense."
the analogy. I totally love the analogy. And people talk about outcomes and say, "Well, I post something and I don't have an immediate outcome." To your point, I take somebody to lunch or I host a happy hour. I may not have an immediate outcome, but I've started building that relationship. And again, relationships are so powerful and they pay so many dividends if you're willing to pour into that relationship over a period of time. And what I find is that LinkedIn is just a platform for me to expand my reach and find more relationships where I can help that person or people. So, people that say to me, "Oh, well, it's not one to one." I'm like, well, that's true, but lots of things in sales aren't one to one. It's we pour in over time and we win.
Hey, Rob, I have a question for you. I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of your clients that you're helping with their Microsoft partnership go to market strategy, they probably found you on LinkedIn. Like they probably discovered you and ran into you on LinkedIn. Does it ever translate for them like, hey, I could be found and discovered and build relationships with the Carsons of the world if I was doing what Rob does on LinkedIn?
So if it doesn't, I let them know it. I remind them of it because, and for me, one of the things I say is, they tell me, well, I don't know who to connect with or who to talk with at Microsoft. And so I do a little exercise and I say, well, how many people are you connected with in Microsoft? And they look at me like, how can I be connected with anybody? I haven't reached out to anyone. I'm like, well, there we go. We got our problem. Problem number one.
Ding, 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 ding.
And then so I'm like, look, I make it a goal for myself to try and connect with 25 new people a week inside of Microsoft. And, to do that, I need to bring value to them. So, for me, that is a goal, is to build those relationships. And I tell partners, it's no different for you. You need to be doing this too. And when I reach out to somebody and they go check out my profile, they can see all the places I'm leaning in to help Microsoft achieve their mission. And so it becomes an easy connection. And then the other benefit is the more people I'm connected to, people inside of Microsoft say, well, he knows Carson and he knows Vishal and he knows Kevin Pisker. Oh, all of a sudden, maybe I should connect with them. And so it grows. And to me, it's baffling why partners aren't more invested in building those relationships, because LinkedIn is the tool to do it. It's an easy button to do it.
Yeah, it's the unknown, and it's
Yeah.
it's getting away from the old way. Bob has a great comment out there that we want to spotlight here. It's about how many sales leaders he's worked with who look at sales as a math problem. You got to get X number of meetings, which means X number of outreaches, X number of contacts. This is because of weak sales culture or non-existent sales culture. And a lot of times sales leaders, they haven't been coached or trained properly. They're hearing from their talking heads, hey, you got to go out and you got to book more meetings or make more calls. I used to work in a call center where my manager was like, you got to have X number of dials every day. But our top sellers, we actually made the fewest dials. We had quality conversations. And that's what will ultimately lead to the deal. And so, we got to get away from looking at things like a math problem, or it's got to be, there's a specific roadmap to success. And I think that's what modern selling is all about. It's what are the tools that are going to get me closer to my desired audience, to my desired customer. And they're out there all over the place. In fact, everything that you do has a probability or a propensity. And, we talk about that all the time on this show, the probability of this lead, or the probability, the propensity for this lead to buy. And we get signals now. We have AI and automated tools that might surface, hey, they did this, so the probability of them doing this is X. And, I think there's some value to that. The biggest deals, best deals I've ever done have been as a result of connecting with executives, a lot of executives at those organizations on LinkedIn, but also going to our dormant CRM and marketing leads that nobody would touch. And I'm talking about like going out into our tools of, hey, this person downloaded a white paper, this person bought a year ago. And what I did with them is different than most sellers would do, because a lot of sellers might call or email that person one-to-one. They don't respond. You send 10, 15, 20 emails to these people and nobody replies, you're going to move on. And I get that. So what I started doing is gathering all these leads, doing newsletters, building community, engaging them with webinars. And that's what ended up working so well. In fact, one of the biggest deals I ever did, I reached out to somebody that had purchased a year ago. And my manager at the time said, don't bother going after them. They wanted this business model that's funky, this purchasing model that we can't deliver. And I went out and took the meeting anyway. And they were telling me, hey, we currently buy through this model. And if you can give me this percent, I'll do business with you. And I made a case to my leadership of exactly what I was trying to do. I managed to find a loophole, and it ended up being the biggest deal in the channel that year. So my point is, like, there's opportunity out there. You got to figure out where's your audience, what's the probability and viability, and you've got to invest in all of the channels where your customers are in a meaningful way that is smart. And it's not easy to do. The hardest part is finding balance. Where am I going to invest? Where am I going to spend my time? But over several years of doing it, you get to a rhythm that will work for you.
Absolutely. And one of the things that for me is it's important to know who your audience is. And, people talk to me about, what do I post? What do I share? I'm like, if you know who your audience is, just post like you were talking to them. Post like you were just sitting down across the table, having a conversation like we are now. And, you'll speak to your audience if you do that. And, To your point, Carson, about the platform of bringing or approaching it differently, like webinars and newsletters, LinkedIn is a fabulous tool to get that information out there, to get the word out about that. And I tell partners all day long, it's like, look, if you're going to host a webinar or have a webinar, that's valuable and important to Microsoft, because I guarantee you that someone in their patch wants to hear about the problem you're talking about. So share it with them. It gets back to our conversation 15 or 20 minutes ago. Get in front of these people, share this content. And if you've got webinars or newsletters you can share, that's just more value you're bringing to the table.
One more thing on this thread, because you got me all fired up. Talking to sellers who work with partners, don't give your partners the garbage leads that don't talk to you or don't ever respond. Give them the Glengarry leads. Give them your high potential leads. Because if you get a partner out there, again, being an extension of you and being your part of your sales army that's out there selling, it's less work for you. It's how you can work smart, not hard. It's how you can orchestrate a situation. I may be the quarterback of the team, but I got to have those receivers that I can trust and get the ball to, and then keep thinking of plays. That's the key element. Put your partners in the game. That's why it's important to find the ones that you trust. For me, partners are people. I've had great relationships over my 10 and a half years here with very specific people, and it's because I knew I could trust them. And we did things together. We ran plays. They worked, and then I trusted them. They got stuff done, and then I knew, like, hey, if I give the ball to this person, they're going to score. So I'm stupid if I'm not doing that. And that's the mentality we got to take, is develop strong relationships where there's trust and transparency, just like you're developing a relationship with a customer. Your partners, you want to invest in those relationships too, and figure out, if I give the ball to this person, they're going to score.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Carson. And I think partners sometimes forget that you're not building a relationship with Microsoft. You're building a relationship with Carson. You're building a relationship with Vishal or whomever you're working with. And that's what you have to remember. And don't worry about what you're going to do for the entire of the group. Just worry about what you're going to do to help Carson move the ball forward. And that's enough. Then just move forward with that mindset.
So Rob, one of the areas we talk a lot about in mastering modern selling is the use of what we're doing here: live shows, podcasts, that kind of stuff. It seems to me that would be a very logical strategy for a partner to implement, right? Is a live show or a podcast or some combination thereof, and would be a great way to get in the door, not just with potential prospects, but with, again, Microsoft sellers, by getting them indoctrinated into the podcast, getting them. It
Mm-hmm.
just, again, it's a very valuable, repeatable way. Is that something that you tend to recommend, or is that too much for a lot of those partners, time wise and investment wise, or is there pushback?
There's always a little bit of pushback, but I tell partners it's one of the quickest and easiest ways to get in front of the people you want to be in front of, and for them to learn about who you are, how you impact the world. And then, to borrow from what Carson was talking about, interviewing some customers, talking about some wins you had, and sharing that works both for your future customers. It works for Microsoft, where you're sharing, hey, look, Carson, what I did, look at the win we had, look at the problem we solved, look at the business outcomes we achieved. And sharing that in a format like this, like a show or a video, is so powerful. And I tell partners not to even overthink it. When I started, it was on my phone, and I would just talk to the phone. And you've got two producers. My only producer sits right behind me here. So it's like, don't overthink it, don't overwork it. Just get out there, talk to the camera, talk to the person on the other end of the video, and share the story. People love to hear stories, and this is the way. LinkedIn is the way to get that out into the world and share it with the world, in my opinion.
Hey guys, can I address to? I've got another message, and I don't know what Restream's doing, but there's a lot of people that are making comments and asking questions that we're just not seeing on screen today. So we apologize for everybody. It's a Restream issue, but I know, like, Terry, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it the right way. Pat's Carson, this is on your stream. She was asking, what are some of the key strategies and techniques that can help professionals build relationships in this digital landscape? And I know we've been answering all those, but I just want to address that and say, Terry, thank you. We're not ignoring you. We just are not seeing all of these, and there's a couple other off of my stream too that are not coming in.
We're also getting LinkedIn users and not names and a few of these as well.
Yeah.
So, Carson,
Yeah, come on, restream.
Can you call the LinkedIn people and tell them to take care of this? I guess it's probably a restream problem, isn't it?
Actually, yeah, it's not.
All right, so Brandon, you can take care of that.
Perfect. Throw it on my plate. What's
That's
more
right.
stuff on
That's
my
right.
plate? Yeah.
Well, you're going to Egypt tomorrow, so we can't throw too much on.
I am. I'm excited. I haven't started packing yet. I better start doing.
How long are you going to be there?
Actually, I'll be gone for 10 days.
So are you going to do the next show from Egypt live?
I am. I'm going to do next Wednesday from Cairo, and hopefully I'll have some of the team with me still. So for those that know, we have an office in Cairo, Egypt. Our personal brand assistants and some of our other team, and Noor, who runs our Egyptian team out there and coordinates our show and does all this. So I get to finally go out and spend time with our team. We have 8 people on the team now. We've got a few job openings there, and they're awesome. I'm excited to go.
It's a couple James Bond movies that have been filmed in Cairo.
Right.
I had to get back to the movies. I was just waiting for it.
I know. You almost threw the Moneyball word out there. You talked about the data. You talked about probability, and you just we're shy of using Moneyball. But Carson, before we wrap up, and not to totally change, but looks like you got something new on the wall there behind you that Doc Brown might be.
Yeah. So my wife got me this the clock tower. So if you look real close, you can see Doc Brown hanging from the clock tower from Back to the Future, and it is intentionally set and stopped at 10:04 p.m., which is when the lightning struck. So, and now I need something for this gap right here. Maybe I should get a picture of like the 3 of us and put it up there.
That would be good. That would be good. And I do think the wire across the room will be really good as well. Just
we were talking about that in the green room in preparation. I have the wire going over to my bonsai tree over here in the corner. So,
all right, Rob, I'm sorry you have to put up with all this.
He knew what he was getting himself into. He knew
Exactly.
So, as we kind of wind down here, Rob, what would, again, kind of just to recap, and maybe, if we were a new client or someone was a new client from you and they were really looking to break into the Microsoft partner system, what would be the blueprint or the roadmap that you would take them down, just again at a high level? And I think, and that'll probably touch on a lot of the things that we hit on today.
For sure. So, in terms of, I'm a big fan personally of having a framework or a strategy that you can implement and you can work against. So for me, there's really 4 components or phases to building your Microsoft partnership. You have to have a strong message, know what you want to be known for, know how to articulate that, and be able to get that message in front of as many people as you can. And that's really where the selling with Microsoft, that second phase, is you have to show up with a strong message. But once you do have that strong message, you have to get that message in front of as many people as you can. Whether you're territory based or you're vertical based or you're just you approach the market horizontally, find your people inside of Microsoft. And LinkedIn is probably the best way to do that. I don't think I've run into anybody at Microsoft that isn't on LinkedIn. So that's the second of the 2 components. Next is operationalize the tools that Microsoft gives you. So Partner Center, Marketplace, these are all tools that are here to help you grow as a partner. And then finally, understand how to leverage the programs Microsoft puts in place. So there's the concept of co-selling. There's all kinds of incentive buckets you can work from and with Microsoft to drive deals forward. So if you bring those 4 components together and really have a plan and a strategy for each one of those 4, and you execute it consistently over time, you will become what I refer to as a go-to partner for the Microsoft people you can impact. That's really what I tell partners is that it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Just think about these 4 buckets or these 4 phases, work through them, and then do it consistently over time.
And imply modern selling throughout all of that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that for me, it's all built on LinkedIn in terms of phase 2, which is reaching out. That is 100% LinkedIn. But in each one of the 4 phases, leveraging social is a big component of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true. Like, be intentional about what your differentiating factor is, both as a seller and also as a partner, right? Like,
Right.
what's the unique problem that you're solving, or what's the gap that you're going to solve for a seller? Like, being intentional about thinking about those types of things goes a long way, because again, you're trying, just like any other seller, you're trying to stand out from all the noise.
Yeah.
You're trying to cut through and really resonate with somebody. Like, what are you going to do that's going to be different? What are you going to say that's going to stand out from all the noise that a seller is going to hear if you're a partner?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it really is. It's a crowded ecosystem, but it is also an opportunity for you to stand out and differentiate yourself. So I'm a big fan of that, Carson. I think that's the way to approach it.
If I were to go to a partner
So
tomorrow, that would be exactly what I would do when I reached out to any seller. Is I'd say, look, give me your book of business. I'm going to go out and I'm going to prospect the heck out of it, and I'm going to come back and bring you some leads. How's that sound? And here's the other thing though too. I've already built a brand that any seller would trust me to do that, I would imagine. And
Yeah.
so that's all the more reason why you should build your brand, build that momentum, build relationships, and then go out not looking for a handout, but go out looking to send somebody to club.
Yeah. Perfect.
it, as we've talked through all this, and Rob, I know you've got your 3-touch framework that you walk people through and help them, and it really kind of all boils down to who do you know and who knows you,
Yeah.
right? Just like everything else. And how do you get to be known? Well, you add value to people. You bring something to the table, and you show up consistently and capture attention because you're serving people and adding value. Really, what it all comes down to. And in my conversation with my old investor, my former investor, I said, we can do it now every day, 24 hours a day, and you don't have to be on a plane and spend all that money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the landscape has changed. And if you're not doing this today, you are missing a massive opportunity, in my opinion, whether it's a personal brand or it's being known for something in a specific niche. The way to do it now is this modern selling approach.
Awesome. Well, Carson, Brandon, any final questions before we wrap up? I know, Brandon, you got to start packing and you got to get your camel reservations, it looks like, from what we're talking about here. So.
Has anybody got any dad jokes? No, I think just kind of in closing, Rob, like if you were, in thinking about even like our non-Microsoft, non-partner ecosystem, what would you say is kind of the biggest takeaway that you've had from working the modern selling process yourself with LinkedIn, with the show? What are some things that people could do right now that would make the biggest difference that maybe they're not thinking about or not doing?
Yeah, I think people shy away from it, but building your own personal brand, building that, investing and pouring into yourself and your own brand is probably the number one takeaway I tell people whether I'm talking to an owner, leader, founder, or I'm talking to a seller. I mean, you need to build your own brand. Nobody's going to build it for you, except Carson, or except Brandon. You can build it for them, but they need to invest in that and be known for something that sets you apart from the rest of the world. Because we all bring something unique, we all have some unique skills, and we just aren't sharing them with enough people. So for me, build your personal brand. That would be the number one takeaway. Go do that, and all other things will fall into place.
Can I add to that real quick? Because I think their unique brand, it's not that hard, right? Your unique brand is your unique experiences, your unique thoughts, and your unique observations. It's not like you have to go out and create something all new and different. It's just showing up sharing like, hey, we did this one time and this is the way it worked, or I was having a conversation with somebody who had this problem and this is what we talked about. Like, that's unique. It doesn't have to be this like, oh, whole new massive, framework or anything. It's just, and I would say it's even more just showing up consistently, especially because most people don't.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. The consistency is key. And just being authentic, being who you are. I mean, I'm not trying to be anybody that I'm not. This is what I know. This is how I know it. This is what I've taken away from these experiences. Let me share that with you. And that's it. That's as complicated as it has to be. Or
Yeah,
as simple as
I would think that would be easy for a partner, because why are you a partner, right? You're bringing something
oh yeah.
special to the table. So just talk about what you're bringing special to the table. And as
Yeah.
Brandon says, it doesn't have to be any more difficult than that.
Yeah. Agreed.
And Bob, did you guys see in the comments there that Bob said to check my messages? Let me see if I can pull this off real quick. Let's see. I don't want to open the wrong stuff here, but let's give this a shot.
Yeah, be careful.
Do you see that?
No, we don't see anything.
Okay. I thought I shared it.
Oh, wait, hold on a
there
minute.
it is.
Hold on a
You have,
minute. Hold on.
yeah,
No,
you have to let it
I have to
on.
click a button. There, hold on.
Yeah.
Wow, there you are.
There's Bob on a camel in front of the pyramids.
Nice.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Nice, Bob.
Are you going to have one of those?
All right.
You
I
should
think
be
I'm
doing
gonna
that
have
with a
to
fist bump.
now.
You should be on the camel with a fist bump. That's what
Ooh.
you need to be doing.
Or fist
Yeah,
bump
I
the
can have
camel.
my.
That's right.
Yeah,
Careful.
I'm out of my. Oh yeah, I don't want to do that. Let's see. I can have my. I can have my fist bump shirt on, and now we have our
Oh,
fist bump stress balls.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
want some swag, man. What do I got to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
I get you swag.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I gotta get. I've got polo shirts coming that'll be out for Carson, you and Tom.
got a coffee mug back here for fist bump, but yeah, I need some more swag.
Yeah. All right, Rob, thank you. I mean, some great comments here. People really appreciated some of this insight. Where can people learn more about you? LinkedIn, I bet, huh?
Oh, LinkedIn is the place to go. I'm not that hard to find. There's not that many of us Rob Fegans out there, so you can find me there. And I'm happy to engage and chat with you over LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And thank you guys for having me as part of the Century Club. Now that's awesome.
You're the
That's
first
right.
guest. You're the first guest of the new century.
Love it.
All right. Well, thanks again, Brandon, Carson. Take us home.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Rob, always good to see you. And until next time.